interviewing training. So, of course, I am coming to you every couple of days. It's been a little bit more regular with just some great ways that you can use a few tips that I have to really improve your interviewing. And I wanted to start off by just wishing you a very happy hump day. It is Wednesday. We are halfway there. It has been an interesting week for me thus far. And so I'm definitely, even though we're only on Wednesday, I am ready to get till Friday. And just kind of as a cute little Mercedes oddness, I want to show you my sweater. If anybody loves The Mandalorian, this is my favorite thing that I love living in. Totally casual since I'm working from home. So let's get started. I am going to tell you 4 ways that you're really tanking yourself in your interview process, right? And so what I'm going to tell you today is, hey, stop that. Don't do that anymore. It's bad. Sorry. So give me just a moment to pull up the live on my phone so I can see who's here. And then if you are here, just let me know in the comments. Just say hi. Let me know you're here, that you're watching, and that, of course, you are improving your resume, or excuse me, not your resume. Do that too. But improving your interview every day with all of these trainings. So I want to know from you if you've ever said something in your interview like, yeah, I really just need this job. I have 4 kids to feed. And last month I didn't pay my electricity bill because I have so much going on. And also my mother's in the hospital and I'm really just trying to work on all of these things. And so I just really need this job. Have you ever said anything along those? I mean, really, I'm exaggerating, right? But I think there's some people that might do that. But have you ever just kind of put it all on the table and was just like, this is how it is and this is why I need this job, or this is the truth and the fact of the matter of what happened in my previous job? Like, has that been you? And if so, let me know in the comments. Another thing that I want to know is, have you ever been like, yes, and so I absolutely had to leave that job because, they just didn't respect me. People are just out to get me. I didn't like my coworkers. It was just a very awful work environment that I just couldn't deal with anymore. So if that is you, let me know in the comments if that sounds like something you've ever said in an interview. Another one is, let me know if you've ever said in an interview something like, yeah, I can do all of those things. Yeah, I can do that. I've done that before. I can do it again. I'm great at doing those things. I did that at my previous job. Actually, I did that for my manager. I could do all of that. So let me know if you're like, yes, I can do that all the time in your interviews. Okay. And the last thing is well, yeah, I know that I am applying for this particular role, but what I had actually done before was this, and this is how I did it. And did you go into detail about how you did it, but then it had nothing to do with the position at hand. So did any of those sound like you? The person that's just sharing too much information, that's just too negative, that is just too broad, or just the person that's super irrelevant. So those are the couple of things that I'm going to talk about today. If any of those sound like things that you have said in your interview, I want to tell you to stop that. Don't do it anymore. Throw those answers away. What we're doing right now is just really going into detail of why those things don't work in your interview and how that's really keeping you back. And ultimately, I know so many of you are getting interviews and you get really excited for the interviews. And then you show up, you feel like you're doing your best, you're answering with the best of your capabilities for the interview, and then time after time, you are getting a rejection letter or they're passing on you for a different candidate. And you're not really getting any consideration, you feel like, in your job search. And because of that, that has extended your job search for many more months than you would have anticipated. You've gone on 15 interviews and not one of those positions you have secured. And if you did secure them, maybe they weren't really a job that you were interested or happy to be in the first place. So a lot of these things I'm going to tell you are probably the reasons why you're getting a rejection letter. And I have so many people who I talk to, whether it's coaching or whether they're in any of my groups, is asking me questions, whatever that is. I have a lot of people that come to me and they say, listen, I just can't, I'm not getting any results. I don't know what to do. People won't give me feedback. I've asked for it. I don't know what to do next. Well, the fact of the matter is you are probably never going to get that feedback from the hiring manager or the recruiter. It's just, from an HR standpoint, way too much liability in that. So they're just not going to do it. They're just going to tell you nicely that they move forward with another candidate, even if they didn't, right? So this is the fact of the matter. And I think you need to, when I'm going through this, you need to really critically think about some of the answers that you've given in some of your interviews and ask yourself, really and truly, have you answered any of these questions incorrectly in this manner? Because like I said, it's definitely shutting you out of the interview process. It's you're not showing up as the best candidate. You're showing up as somebody that doesn't fit in their culture. You're fitting in as somebody who's not a fit for the role or the position, just based upon these 4 things. So these are things that I'm looking at when I review candidates that says this person is either going to be a problem, they're not going to fit in with our culture, they're not going to be productive. These types of red flags, which you might not really recognize as red flags in your when you're answering interview questions, is what I'm going to talk about today. So I'm going to take a break because I have, I think, 4 people, maybe 5 on. The notifications are a little off. Anywho, it keeps fluctuating. But just say hi. I want to know who's out there. Just drop your name and say hello. And also, I love knowing where you all are from, you know, just general, not like your street address or anything like that. And I'll take a break to also say who I am. So I know there's a lot of people that are new to my community. They don't know who I am. They don't know what I do. And of course, my name is Mercedes. Right now, I am in Gainesville, Florida, but I was born and raised in Orlando. And my day job, what I do is I am a talent acquisition specialist, specifically a talent consultant. And that's kind of a special way to say I do executive and hard to fill recruitment. So my entire day is really just filled with screening candidates, interviewing, implementing best practice in my interview process, and really attracting high quality candidates. And I don't mean just the best candidates in the pool. I'm talking about nationwide executive searches. So that's where my expertise comes from, and I use that to really help you show up better in the recruitment process, whether it's your resume, your interview, wherever that is. So I really partner with millennial professionals who are looking to transition into new roles. So that is my thing, right? My work job, and then here for HR for Millennials. So that's a little bit about me. And so I say, oh, I said hi, Charlie. From North Carolina, welcome. If anybody else is listening, I would love to know that you're here. I'm not gonna like pinpoint you for anything crazy or anything like that, but I really it only tells me that 6 people are watching. So say hello. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Like I was saying, I was going over a couple of things that you might be answering in your interview process. And I'm gonna go into details of those. So one of the ways that you could really be taking your interview and shutting yourself out of the interview process is that you are being too real. Too real, right? So your interview, I definitely teach people to show up and be genuine, to be themselves, to be humans, right? You have to build a relationship there. The person on the other side of the table has to like you in some way. And so while they're not necessarily hiring their friend, they want to feel like they've built a connection with you, like you're somebody that they would want to work with. And sometimes when you're too real, what that really shows up in the interview is this person has too much drama, right? I know too much of their business already from this interview. This is going to cause me problems, right? So I know a lot of people mean well when they come into an interview and people are asking, oh, okay, tell me about yourself. And you kind of go into maybe your situation at home, or maybe even that you have 5 kids and that you travel to take care of your grandmother, things like that, that just seem very conversational. But in an interview, the recruiter doesn't really actually want to know too much about your personal life. And from a legal standpoint, that's because we don't want to make any employment decisions based on that. But sometimes it's just very innocent. It's, I have a wife and 3 kids, or I have a husband and 2, whatever that is, right? Those things are very innocent. But sometimes when you share too much details, or you show kind of, things about your personality that aren't really necessarily appropriate in the workplace. So I've had people just be either use slang in their interviews. They just are approaching the conversation from a way that's very lax and laid back. I've had people that are just, like I said, too open and honest about their situation in life, whether it's their employment status, their home life, the things that they have going on. And sometimes that's a huge red flag, because that candidate is that really it makes you start over with that. It makes you wonder how that candidate is going to show up in the workplace. You know, are they going to bring that drama here? Are they going to be too lax in their job? Are they going to show up professionally when they're showing these types of red flags? And so while you want to be comfortable and conversational in your interviews, if you're too real, like you're too open, you're too transparent, you're too all out there, it's something that's going to hold you back. So of course you want to show up as your best self. You want to be personable. You want to be presentable. But you always want to make sure that at the end of the day, everything that you say is going to be used to assess you as a candidate. And even if it's just something that's a joke, right? Don't. Hi, Ronnie from Daytona Beach. Welcome. Okay, anybody else? I know I have quite a few people, so just say hi in the comments. I really do love this to be interactive. And also, if you do have any questions in mind, like maybe sometimes you realize that you were too real in your interview, and just maybe a specific answer that you might have provided to the interviewer, and maybe you're just trying to look at a different way to assess that, right? Okay. Another way, sorry, I also missed that. Another way that you can be too real is to be too blunt or too direct or too forward. So I know that there's a lot of people that they just want to cut to the chase. That's just in their personality. But especially us, if you're in the South, especially, that really doesn't, we don't handle blunt well, okay? We just don't do it. It just comes off as rude to us. So that might be different in other parts of the country. But for us, you know, have the pleasantries, be polite, and make sure that you are always thinking about how your interaction and what that means about you in the process, right? And especially what you say. Okay, cool. So too negative, right? So that is something that I see commonly when people are trying to, in an interview, you should only ever be positive, right? So you should never say anything negative about your employer, about another individual that you work for, and you should never say anything negative about yourself unless you have a way to pivot that. So I'll talk about the pivoting in a minute. But in terms of being positive, right? So let's think about the ways that we're really challenged in this. So I know that's very hard for individuals, especially if you're like laid off or you were terminated or something like that. And they're asking you, well, you know, why did you leave your current position? And I think a lot of people choose a negative route when they answer this question. So they choose to either talk about how they were laid off. They choose to talk about why it wasn't a fit for them. In terms of, you know, things that weren't going right at the company that they were working with, people that they didn't like working with. I mean, sometimes they don't go into detail, but in terms of you just saying, even if you're saying, I left that company because it had a terrible environment and I'm really looking for something different. So that's, even though it's a very benign way of answering that in a negative way, it seems that way. But what it seems is that you're very negative in the context of the question. So how you actually want to phrase that is just to spin that in a negative light. So if you were leaving because of the environment, there may be another way that you can point that out to say, no, I was actually leaving for a better opportunity. See the difference? You left because you were looking for a more positive work environment, right? So that is the same exact sentence, and one was very negative and one was very positive, okay? Because for people like me, people who work in a very healthy, happy, collaborative work environment, we don't want to introduce negative. That's not something that's part of our culture. So when you phrase things that way, and especially if you do it consistently, it's going to hold you back. Now, another thing is, well, what happens if they ask me something that is negative? Like, what if they ask me about a time that I failed and I need to answer that? Well, it's very easy. You tell them the time that you failed. And then you instead turn that in a positive way and tell them all the ways that you use that to succeed later, right? So there's a very specific way to pivot in an interview process, so that in your answer for your interview, right? So that even goes to them asking about your strengths and weaknesses. So that's something that you can very easily turn something negative into positive. So that's reason number 2. So let's go recap. We had reason number 1 was that you're being too real or too blunt or just too honest. Number 2 is that you're too negative. And number 3 is that you're too broad. So this is one of the things that just absolutely kills people in their job search. And I've had high-level executives do this too. So it's just something that happens a lot, and people just, they make that mistake all the time. When you're asked for an interview question, you want to be specific. So if they're asking you a broad question, just like in general, to tell you about your approach to managing a project, right? That's a very broad question, and people come back at that with a broad answer. Well, I plan out all the steps, and then I put these steps into motion, and I make sure I'm successful by doing this and this and this. And you're talking this very broad, generalized way of tackling how you tackled that project, right? And so that is actually the worst thing that you can do when you're answering interview questions, because they don't actually see the proven result in that. They just are seeing your thought process, which is important. So you want to start with that, but then you want to also go into a specific time that you did that, and particularly a specific time that you did that successfully. So never ever answer other than the first time. Okay, sorry. Let's put this right. When you answer an interview question, you start off by answering the question. It can be broad, but you must always close with a specific, right? That is always what you have to do. Otherwise, people just don't translate. They're like, okay, well, she kind of thought about that. But unless they know a story that you did, they don't remember their answer. It's not meaningful and it's not impactful in your interview process, so it doesn't help you. Okay, let me know if you have any questions about the being too real, the being negative, or the being too broad, because I want to know. Okay. The fourth one is, I think it's my favorite. It's the, what does that have to do with anything? That's like when people do this all the time. It just breaks my heart because I think they're trying. Okay, so it's when you get a question that's like, tell me about a project that you oversaw, and was it successful? What did you do? How did you ensure that it was successful? And people are like, oh, okay, I'll tell you about this project. So what happened was we were bringing out this new product in the sales department, and we were all excited about it. And man, we went out and we made this huge marketing plan. I actually oversaw the marketing plan, and I did all of these steps. And guess what? At the end of this whole marketing plan, wow, we had like a 200% increase in sales. It was insane. I got a promotion. I got awards. The CEO came to my office. Okay, so that's a great story, right? It's also personable, and it shows what this person did and why it was important. But guess what? They were interviewing for an HR assistant role, okay? So I picked this very elaborate, insane, hopefully this never happens, but I think it does, example to kind of drive that fact home. If you go to an interview and you are asked any question, you must pick a story and an example and map that out as it relates to the job. And I know it sounds, when I'm saying it like this, super obvious, but time and time again in interviews, I see people coming and they're talking about something that they did in a previous role that is not transferable. I mean, if it's transferable, like you're transitioning from a role that you have never been in, and transitioning into a new role, you're using transferable skills to make that jump. That's a different type of answer, and that has to do with the alignment that you make at the end of your statement. But what I'm talking about is you never make an alignment of how that applied to that role. You never made sure that this was something that was not only important but relevant to the person that is listening to you and trying to make sure that you are a fit for this role. And it's crazy. So if you are applying to the role, make sure when you're interviewing that you know that role inside and out. Like, you know exactly what they are looking for. You know the qualifications, the roles and responsibilities, because every single interview question is an opportunity to better align yourself with those responsibilities and those goals. Okay, so if you do not find a way to make that alignment, you wasted that interview question, and actually you probably hurt yourself in the interview process, because that's kind of a ding against you, because you're like, well, they couldn't come up with an answer that was relevant. I've seen it so many times where even this candidate, very qualified, currently in a similar role, candidate consistently picked examples from her work experience that were 15 years ago. And that, you would say, well, they were good examples. That's probably fine. Well, how is that perceived by the individual on the other side? How is that perceived by the hiring manager? It's perceived like something is wrong in between. Why are all of your examples 15 years ago, right? Because they're not as relevant and they're not as important. And that has to do with not only your skill set, but the role that they're looking for right now. So just to go back through this, so 4 ways that you are tanking your interviews is that 1, you're just being too real, open, and honest. 2, you're being too negative and you need to stop that and flip it and pivot it to be positive. And 3 is that you're being too broad. You're just talking in general statements and you say nothing specific about your skills and experience. And then 4 is that, well, what does this have to do with anything? This is not relevant to the role, your current experience, whatever that is. Okay, so I know I still have a couple of people on the line. Let me know if anybody has any questions about any specific interview questions, about anything that I addressed today. I know that there is some of this that is, of course, really going to vary based on the interview question. But always when you're answering, or even if you're preparing independently before the interview with just some sample or doing a mock interview, you have to ask yourself, is your response aligned in this way? And are you really revealing any red flags about your personality, your background, and your experience in your answers? So I don't see any questions, but I know there is a massive lag on Facebook. So I will hang out for a little bit and see if we have any questions about interviewing, because I like getting questions. And while I wait, I want to show you my favorite cup. Can you read it? I love this cup. It says coffee in one hand, confidence in the other. Makes me feel like I can get up and do things every day. Okay, well, I don't see any questions, but if you do, of course, and I know that I'm going and I'm doing lives every day. I'm probably going to have a little bit of a watch party on Friday for those of you who have missed some of the other lives. Sorry, I shouldn't say lessons. They're not lessons. They're just like mini sessions. So I'm going to probably do a watch party on Friday just to go over all of them that we've had thus far and kind of be there to answer questions and kind of make this a massive recap of the week. And then also, some of you are probably here and you're thinking like, okay, Mercedes, I get this at face value. I get not being too real. I get not being negative. I get not being broad, and I get making sure that my answers are aligned, but I really need some extra help in really understanding how I weave that into my interview questions, how that correlates with the STAR method, and what that really means for me being a strong interviewer. So if you're interested in today and really doing the extra work to make sure that when you go to your interviews, I really want to invite you to my interview boot camp. I don't know why I can't talk all of a sudden. And so I'm going to share this because it's my little graphic that I made and I love it. But in the interview boot camp, I'm going to tell you how to really overcome each of these in your interview questions. So if you're like, how do I pivot from answering what are your greatest weaknesses and how do I make sure that I answer that in a positive way? I'm going to be talking about that in detail and other interview questions in the interview bootcamp. It is on May 9th, and early registration ends on the 1st. So you can register afterwards, but right now, if you're very interested in doing this workshop, you think that really interviewing is what's causing you or what's really hindering you from making that career change, moving forward. I know it's super disheartening when you are going to interviews and you're not getting any responses that are favorable, or you're getting rejected every time. It can definitely burn out your job search, okay? So we want to make sure that you get the resources to move forward quickly so that you don't get burnt out and, of course, land your dream job, right? So all of these are skills. Your resume writing is a skill, interviewing is a skill. All the things that you're doing with your marketing and your personal and professional brand, those things are skills that you can build up. And so I know that if you're here and you're like feeling like you're nervous, you're here and you feel like, you're just always going to be bad at interviewing and you can't do anything about it. That is not correct. Just like learning anything on the job, training, whatever you want to call it, interviewing is a skill and you can learn to do it better and get some more results. Make sure you get past that phone screen, make sure you get past that interview and get to the offer stage. And so I told you all, I made a huge mistake at the beginning of my job search at the end of last year. I made a huge mistake in believing that I just understood so much about the interview process that I forgot to pay attention to my mental my mindset going into the interviewing process. And so it's very important that you make sure that you hone your skills in interviewing, that you go into your interview with the right mindset, and that also you have all the preparation needed to really excel, make an impact, and position yourself as top talent. So if this is something that you want to learn how to do, I really encourage you to attend the Show Up, Show Out Bootcamp. It is just $29.99 to enroll if you enroll before or on May 1st, and then after that, the price goes up. So if this is something that you want, I hope that the class is not a barrier to you. I think you're going to get a ton of information out of this that's going to help you get your job, your dream job faster than ever. So let me know if you have any questions about the Show Up, Show Out interview bootcamp. Again, we're going to go through interview basics. We're going to go through interview questions. We're going to go through mindset shifts to help you interview better, like overcome fear and really show up with confidence and ultimately leave with your offer in hand. So I see Charlie said great. I don't know what you said great to, Charlie, but I'm great that it's great. Okay, I don't see anything coming in. I know there's a little bit of a lag because I can see it when I look down at my phone. But I will wait for a couple of minutes and just make sure that you don't have any questions. If you know that the bootcamp is for you, again, registration is open for you. So I'll post it in the comments. You can kind of go right there. Look at the details. I didn't forget to say that the boot camp is taught via Zoom, so that's how we will do the workshop. You'll also get a workbook so that you can make sure you get all of that knowledge, keep it, and you're able to review that and prepare for your interview. So that's all I have to say about that. I'm going to hang out for a couple more, about a minute or so, just to make sure I don't have any questions in the chat. I know Facebook has a huge lag when we do the live. And I am officially comfortable with the BeLive live streaming platform. So I like it. All right. Awkward silence. I already showed you my Mandalorian sweater. I shared you my favorite coffee cup. So I don't really have any other ways to kind of burn a little bit of time while I'm waiting for questions. So that being said, I absolutely appreciate your time today. I really hope that you got something out of this training. I really, really, really hope that you don't do any of these things that are really tanking your interview and really shutting you out of the interview process. And I know that you will get success in your job search. It's just a matter of when you take the time to learn, educate yourself, and build the skill that is necessary for being a successful job seeker. So I will talk to you all next time. If you're watching this later too, and you have questions about anything that we talked about, interviewing, job seeking, or the boot camp, make sure that you write those in the comments. I will be going through them through, whenever whenever you comment on it. If you watch this from a year from now, I will probably comment on it too. Anyway, okay, I'll see you all later, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. I'll probably see you all on Friday for the watch party. Woohoo! Bye.